All right then, let's get it going, as we have a limited time for the room reservation. Just to let you know, Yusra and Alexis, you're in the screen open, and our participants can see and hear you as well. I will have you up there throughout the panel, so just some heads up. Okay. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Integration Policies for Successful Resettlement of Refugee Women in Greece, organized by PIGI Koinsep, based in Athens, Greece, in partnership with the Journalists and Writers Foundation and Set Them Free. I am Cemre, UN representative of the Journalists and Writers Foundation and co-founder of Set Them Free, a human rights advocate working on civil and political rights violations and gender mainstreaming of the sustainable development goals through global civil society partnerships. So today we will be hearing from human rights defenders working on Greece, gender experts, as well as refugee women and youth from Greece. Last summer, I was in Athens to speak at a conference on children refugee rights, and the Set Them Free, our grassroots platform that we initiated with 10 women coming from different professional backgrounds back in 2017. We do advocacy programs for the empowerment of refugee women, and since I was there, I visited PIGI's office there, organized a certificate ceremony for the graduates of women refugees who completed our online language programs, Sisters Without Borders, both in English and German. And in this project, we had over 300 women and children refugee participants who took series of online classes. So I spoke with a group of youth advocates, women refugees, who were doing a fantastic job, integrated into the community very well, studying at various successful schools. So in between speakers, even though I'm the moderator, I would love to add some feedbacks and my observations from the community in Greece too. So UNHCR Greece facts sheet indicate that the sea and land arrivals doubled in 2022 compared to a year before. So currently there are over 147,000 refugees and 22,000 only asylum seekers recorded in Greece by UN, which is a safe haven, a gateway for these hundreds of thousands of individuals escaping from authoritarian regimes, wars, humanitarian crisis of many different forms taking place across Middle East and Africa. So among these countries in which people are subjected to enforced migration, Turkey recently hit the top of the list. So the Human Rights Report Card of Turkey has never been in the perfect shape, but for especially minorities, people coming from different ethnicities, religions, dissidents. But the grave and systemic human rights violations in Turkey drastically increased after the failed coup attempt. And according to very rough estimates of civil society organizations working on the ground to assist and empower refugees, over 500,000 people crossed the Evros River. Hundreds drowned, unfortunately, in this life-threatening journey. So what I want to say is the border crisis in the region today is not a humanitarian crisis. It's a political issue, because recently the European Union adopted new border restrictions and other edicts that have prevented people seeking sanctuary from entering Europe, putting the world's most vulnerable people increasingly at risk. And the elevating political tensions between Turkey and Greece placed refugees in the position of a bargaining chip. But despite all, I witnessed myself there speaking with the refugee women, refugee young people, children in Greece, met with high-level authorities and experts on the ground. There is no problem among the Greek society for the integration of refugees, and I was able to see how the political context was boosting the refugee problem in the region. Especially after the war broke in Ukraine, Greece has done a very good job, especially to assist the unaccompanied minors. But surely today our priority is to go over the civil society best practices, policy mechanisms in Greece to empower especially women refugees, and talk about the importance of successful integration of refugee women and children into the society for the sustainable peace and development for all. And the main organizer today, getting all of us together in the room, is PIGI Koinsep, based in Athens, as I mentioned. We really did our best to have them here from Greece, but to lead this session. But the visa processes for refugees is another problem that we can speak about for hours. So there we are, hopefully, thanks to the virtual connections. We have Yusra Arslan from PIGI, and we have this wonderful Greek human rights expert, Alexis Anagnostakis, over Zoom, as they virtually join us. Yusra, before we proceed with the speakers, I would like to give the platform to you for your opening remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi everyone from Athens. I've been in Greece for 2.5 years with my 2 sons and my husband. The reason I came here from Turkey is a government that has moved away from democracy. About 10 years ago, 2 million people in Turkey were marginalized because they didn't approve of the government. I'm just one of those 2 million people. I was under the rubble of a social earthquake. Firstly, I was expelled from my work in ministry. Then we were hidden in our house for 2 years. While trying to come to Greece, we were caught by the police on the Turkish side. My husband went to prison. Then I entered to the prison and I was released pending trial. And 2.5 years ago, I was able to come to Greece. Since the first day I came here, I've been trying to pay the price of freedom with kindness. I work as a volunteer at the Turkish NGO, PIGI, which organizes this panel with Journalists and Writers Foundation. I want to tell you briefly about PIGI Koinsep. It's a non-profit organization registered in Athens, Greece in February 2020. All members of the organization are refugees who had to leave their homeland of Turkey to seek refuge in a safe harbor due to security concerns. The Greek word PIGI, meaning life and source, also explains the reason for our organization's existence. Because Greece is the source of a new life for both our society and all refugees and asylum seekers. I want to tell about the platforms of PIGI: education platform, women's empowerment platform, youth platform, health platform, business world platform, academic platform, social responsibility and solidarity platform, media and dialogue platform, culture and art activities platform, ethical values and motivation platform. And there's a song that Turkish singer Zulfilvaneli and Greek singer Maria Faranduri sing together, Santo Metanasti, in English, like a refugee. There is an expression like this: like the immigrant in your own land, day and night, you heal the wound. As in the song, I was injured, and not just my own wound. I'm trying to heal the wounds of other refugees as well. Thank you to Greece for giving me freedom, and PIGI for giving me the opportunity to the goodness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yusra. Well, she ended with some strong words, and I'm pretty sure many of us in the room are aware Turkey and Syria were severely hit by a series of earthquakes, and refugees who are enforced migrants from Turkey did not forget their hometowns. And even this refugee-led civil society organization did a tremendously outstanding, successful job to receive humanitarian assistance from their local authorities, mobilize the civil society organizations, and send their assistance, help in monetary terms, in terms of toys or other goods to Turkey. So thank you so much, Yusra. Please stay with us. Next, I have Alexis joining us from Athens. He's a criminal lawyer in the jurisdiction of Athens Bar Association, barrister to the Hellenic Supreme Court and Council of State, member of the Hellenic Criminal Bar Association. Alexis is also a human rights officer and a chairman of the European Criminal Bar Association Human Rights Committee. He holds membership positions at various law and bar societies. Alexis has been recognized as an expert to give opinion of evidence before the UK Westminster Court in the several extradition requests. He has handled many European Court of Human Rights cases and other international instances, such as the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, and has published various articles in Greek and European legal journals on the subject of human rights. Alexis, thank you so much. I know it's quite late in Athens, but we are extremely glad to have you, a Greek expert, on the platform. So I don't want to risk losing you, so I'm not going to try pulling up your slides, but everybody in the room can clearly hear you, so the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Cemre, for your kind words. And first of all, I should say that I'm extremely by Yusra's words and the price of freedom that brave women and men from Turkey have to pay. I've heard many stories like that, and I've met many people like Yusra during my work, but every time I hear these stories, I can tell how brave these people are and how willing and determined are to fight for their freedom under very difficult circumstances. Cemre, the topic of the presentation is the integration policies to support the resettlement of refugee women in Greece. As you said, it's a topic that we can talk for hours, but we should limit that to the 10 minutes, because the tragedy and the pain and the suffering that are behind these stories and behind these words is beyond any imagination. First of all, I should say that the amazing thing is that there is no single statistic that can capture and demonstrate the overall effectiveness of the integration policies for all women refugees in Greece. But for sure, and be assured for that, it is clear that there are significant challenges to be addressed in that field. So we may not have official figures, but we have some figures from several surveys that demonstrate very important things. The first of all is that according to the statistics of the UN, there are approximately 34,000 refugee and migrant women in Greece. And the majority of them are from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And of course, I do not forget the women from Turkey that in some cases they came here alone, without their husbands, without their parents, without their friends, crossing a freezing river of Evros to find a safe haven from the undemocratic situation that prevailed unfortunately this time. So there are other figures that are quite shocking. First of all, it's that 42% of refugee women in Athens reported experiencing discrimination and xenophobia in their daily life. 8% of human Greece feel clear, which is quite shocking, that 82% of women do not feel safe in their daily lives, do not feel safe in their communities. Also, 25% of refugee women had completed, only 25% of women had completed PIGI. And please note that only 9% of them have completed secondary education. That means that 91% of refugee women in Greece can't afford shopping. The same reports also conducted by independent associations and independent organizations find that women refugees in Greece are at the higher risk of gender-based violence, including sexual harassment and assault. And the reason for that is primarily the lack of safe spaces and the persistence of patriarchal communities that make it very difficult for women refugees to access justice and to seek for support in their problems. So, just to codify that, the problems that refugee women generally face in their lives is, first of all, limited access to information about their rights and about the services that are available to them. And this is because, first of all, the language barriers, the lack of information dissemination, and the difficulty navigating into very complex administrative systems. Second, it's the limited access to education and employment opportunities for obvious reasons, and also there are reported discriminatory attitudes from employers towards women and a lack of qualifications that connect that women refugees do not have actual opportunities to pursue and to proceed to basic education and to get the necessary skills for the employment requirements. Third problem is the limited social support networks. Women refugees often struggle to build relationships with the host community, and this can lead, as you can imagine, to social isolation and mental health problems in some cases. And of course, the most important issue is the administrative delays. Yusra may know that in order to register as a refugee, it may take years in a lengthy, difficult, and bureaucratic system that leads often to frustration and uncertainty, especially for women refugees and for part of the refugee population that find themselves in a vulnerable situation. However, unmet developments in the integration of refugees in Greece, for example, is the so-called STIA housing program. STIA in Greek means house. And it's a program of the Greek government that provides accommodation to vulnerable refugees, including women. It's also the programs of International Organization for Migration that has implemented wonderful vocational training programs to support the economic integration of refugees. Also, the United Nations Population Fund has established safe spaces in several refugee camps in Greece. You know the situation there, the circumstances are tragic, really tragic, and one can feel only shame of seeing this situation. But that's the light in the dark, the creation of these safe spaces where women and girls can access reproductive health services, counseling, and other support services. Overall, let's say the legal basis, and that's the paradox, That's the paradox, okay? Because the legal basis for the protect and the integration of the refugees, and especially the women refugees, is firmly rooted, first of all, in the human rights, international law, and the Greek constitution. Furthermore, there are national policies and plans that prioritize these rights and the protection of women refugees. I mean, at the international level, Greece has ratified all the relevant international conventions that guarantee the rights and safeguard the integration of women refugees. And these are wonderful, and they provide a framework for protecting the rights of women refugees, including the right to non-discrimination, access to education and healthcare. Even the Greek constitution guarantees equal rights to protect all individuals, regardless of their gender and nationality. And also a very optimistic message, the program of the Greek government and the National Action Plan for the Integration of Third Country Nationals 2020-2024, which focuses especially on gender equality and the protection of vulnerable groups, including women. And this plan has specific and very optimistic targets to ensure that women refugees have access to education, healthcare, to employment, and the legal protection. But where is the problem? The problem lies in the implementation. This is the great challenge for the future, and how to make the law work for women and for everybody, regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity. How to make the law work. This is the challenge, and this is the problems that we face in our daily work and in the daily practice, and how to overcome the human conditioning to consider others as inferiors, women, minorities, or anything like that. It's time to realize that it's not us and the others. We are the others, we are included in the we, and we should overcome that with strong and efficient legal provisions. That's the message that I would like to convey to you. In theory, everything seems nice. The implementation is the problem, and how to make the law work in favor of these people. Thank you very much, Cemre.
Thank you so much, Alexis. First of all, super time management. You only took 10 minutes, exact 10 minutes. Bravo for that. You touched upon many important points. You mentioned on how refugee women are facing intersectional violence because of their status, and only because of their gender. They cannot even feel safe in their communities. The communities that they even seek refuge, right? So the resettlement, the mission of resettlement is to make these people who are fleeing wars, humanitarian crisis, make them feel home and safe. That is missing, unfortunately, in this circumstances. And you also underlined the women's lack of accessing justice, which is very important. And we are able to see that in whichever country that we are focusing and analyzing women's successful integration into their resettlement communities, this is #1 problem, and the education. I think civil society partnerships would quite successfully fill this gap. And lastly, as you also touched upon, this is my favorite human rights term, political will. You said the implementation is missing. Yes, I do agree with you. There are so many intergovernmental conventions, human rights treaties existing right across the hall. We have United Nations, but when we do not have political will to implement these international treaties, working groups and everything, the system is failing, just like you perfectly described to us. Thank you so much. I still have you connected. I hope you will be able to stay till the Q&A session. So moving on, now I have Vonya Womack. She is a respected author, a university instructor, and international presenter, keynote speaker who served in director, coordination, and management roles, including her current role as the Executive Director of Refugee's Unknown Stories Untold, which serves to advocate for human rights and to create trauma support for exiles. Based in the United States, Rusu serves international locations. She's an active board member, a published author, leader, and contributor to public service messaging with presentations conducted in North America, North Africa, Africa itself, Eastern Europe, and Vonya is a thought leader who has utilized her international and business experience to create an organization that serves the vastly growing political refugee population. Vonya.
Thank you. I want to thank the Journal and Writers Foundation for supporting me here at the United Nations today to speak for the 67th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women here in New York City. So as was mentioned, my name is Vonya Womack. I'm the Executive Director of Refugee's Unknown Stories Untold. We work on a couple other things that I want to make sure to highlight. We're working on a digital documentation of refugee stories, also assisting with empowerment programs for women and children and doing human rights advocacy. I also am an adjunct professor at Villanova University, where I'm teaching about refugees and immigration, providing some consulting on human rights and leadership education, and have published research articles and chapters on human rights violations of women and children, leadership and resolution. So I'm currently working on some book projects of the refugee stories that I've collected over the last 5 years. And when I'm out speaking to audiences around the world in different places, I state how human rights organizations play a crucial role in telling stories of refugees, because these stories help to hide or shed light on the experiences of people who have been forced to flee their homes due to conflict, persecution, and of course other forms of violence and displacement. But by sharing these stories, human rights organizations can raise awareness about the plight of refugees, and they can highlight the impact, the human impact of displacement. This can help to counteract the negative stereotypes and prejudices about refugees and promote empathy and understanding among a much broader public. So telling refugee stories can also do something else. It can help to hold governments and other actors accountable for their actions or for their inactions. And by documenting and publicizing human rights abuses against refugees, human rights organizations can pressure governments to improve their policies and practices and uphold their obligations under international law. Sharing refugee stories can also be empowering for refugees themselves, as it allows them to give a voice and to be heard. But one thing we must remember is that many refugees that are forced to flee due to political persecution, for example, cannot share their own stories. They must constantly be watching to not draw attention to parents, brothers, sisters, other relatives, work colleagues, and even neighbors from where they fled. And this is the case with the refugee stories from Turkey that I have been collecting and been trying to give a voice to. But by giving refugees a platform to share their experiences and their perspectives, human rights organizations can help to amplify their voices and promote greater inclusion and respect for their human rights, as well as document history and international law breaches like the current Turkey tribunal that was presented at The Hague a couple weeks ago. Now, as the world is increasingly becoming more polarized, we can know this will have significant impacts on refugees around the world, both in terms of their reception by host communities and their ability to access protection and assistance. We will see more climate refugees, seen with fear and suspicion, and that leads to stigmatization and discrimination. And this can make it more difficult for refugees to access essential services, find employment, and integrate into society. We will see increased xenophobia and hostility toward refugees, which results in hate crimes, violence, and other forms of persecution. We'll be bound to see more political divisions that will make it more difficult to reach a consensus on international refugee policies and programs. So this can be challenging in providing support to refugees and create uncertainty about their futures. You know, we're seeing these things now. For example, recently, Greece has been accused of stealing over 2 million from migrants. Now, this includes confiscated valuable items like cell phones and jewelry. Based on the calculations of Alparas, that NGO information and data from other sources that are active in the Evros River border area. You know, this is primarily intended to halt refugees from future unlawful border crossings. What it does is eliminates their existence. It removes evidence that they were there. This only makes refugee lives more difficult. And according to the Minister of Protection of Greece, the Greek police have caught a total of 154,102 illegal migrants from reaching the shores from the beginning of 2022 until September of last year. Now, this kind of action does not draw international support and is bound to result in reduced support for refugee programs and services. We should be working to reduce hostility and counteract the narrative that refugees are being a drain on resources or a threat to national security. Closing borders to refugees can have negative impacts on a country. We know if you look at economic impact, refugees contribute to a country's economy. They do that by working, paying taxes, and starting businesses. By closing borders to refugees, you limit the labor force, reduce the demands for goods and services, and decrease investment opportunities, all of which negatively impact that country's economy. So social tensions will increase, especially if there is already a negative perception of refugees or existing ethnic tensions. This can lead to resentment, prejudice, and hostility toward refugees, which results in social unrest and violence. Legal obligations, humanitarian impact, and diplomatic relations will negatively be impacted among other nations, especially those who are hosting large numbers of refugees, leading to strained relations, reduced cooperation, and even economic sanctions. So these kinds of policies or acts by nations are used to curb refugees from coming. They feed into this larger narrative and they make it difficult for refugees around the world to access basic services like healthcare, education, and housing. Refugees continue to become more vulnerable to exploitation and abuse and may be considered easy targets by criminal gangs or unscrupulous employers. So whenever governments are willing to take the political pressures supported by their party's public opinion, we will continue to see limited access to programs for refugees and asylum access in that nation, ultimately hurting women and girls. So back to polarization. Polarization will continue to have significant negative impacts on refugees around the world, and it is vital for governments, civil society, and the international community to work together to promote tolerance, respect, and solidarity toward refugees and other vulnerable groups. So I started to think, based on the title of this presentation here today, how can we be more forward-thinking? How can we start to change the narrative away from polarization and using tactics that give so little to the value of human life? You know, I've talked about some of the narrative, there are recently in the media, there are some, the narrative about Greece, right? We continue to hear more about pushbacks and things like that. And often that becomes the narrative and we don't talk about the things that are working. So one of the things that I'd like to do is talk about that. No nation is the same, we know that. Each has its own, but when it comes to the refugee crisis, that will only have more refugees and forced migration happening in the future. We must learn to pull the programs that work and adapt them where we can. Forward-thinking models of refugee policy for countries would be prioritizing the protection and well-being of refugees, while also ensuring that host communities are supported and integrated. Countries should have fair and efficient procedures for processing asylum claims and should ensure that all refugees have access to a fair hearing and legal representation. And this includes providing adequate resources and staff to process applications in a timely manner. Policies and programs should be in place to support refugees in integrating into society. And this includes providing access to education, language training, and employment opportunities, as well as ensuring that refugees have access to health care and other basic services. It is imperative that countries ensure that refugees have access to basic human rights, including the right to work, a right to an education, and a right to health care. They should also work to combat discrimination and promote social inclusion, both among host communities and within the refugee population. So, if countries work in partnership with international organizations, non-governmental organizations, or other stakeholders to share resources and expertise, and to ensure that refugees are provided with support, the support that they need, we will have more successful solutions instead of shutting any kind of solutions down. We must provide protection of refugees, including ensuring their safety and their security, and providing them with protection from violence and exploitation. If we empower refugees to become self-sufficient and independent, and give them the tools and resources they need to rebuild their lives, they will ultimately be contributing back to their new communities. So overall, a forward-thinking model of refugee policy would basically prioritize the protection and well-being of refugees, while also recognizing the importance of social inclusion, partnership, and empowerment. It should be based on the principles of human rights, dignity, and respect for all people, regardless of their background or their circumstances. So why don't we spend more time on looking more closely at what countries are doing to provide safety and how they have been successful in refugee integration and adaptation? If we want to be progressive, then we must work together to come up with better solutions, which means attempts at policies and programs that refugees find to be successful based on their own lived experiences. So human history shows us that when cultures share, when cultures trade, and when cultures take responsibility for humanity as a whole, we ultimately have less fighting for resources, less war and conflict, improved educational opportunities, and advancement in economies. And when successful programs are shared among nations, they develop more advanced problem-solving strategies. Now, in the media and international news, like I said, we often hear about boats capsizing and the unnecessary loss of human life. We hear about pushbacks and watch the suffering of mothers and children stranded, crying, and begging for help. We're a world that is choosing to play with human life and death. We are nations around the world choosing whether someone is persecuted enough to seek safety. And oftentimes, we are a world that is lost when it comes to preserving human dignity. Now, I mentioned earlier how Greece has been highlighted in the media for its excessive use of force and unethical practices when it comes to securing its border. But what I want to highlight is that Greece has also done some forward-thinking approaches when it comes to refugees, and that is not often highlighted. I've been many times to Greece, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and around the United States, and actually just returned from Denmark yesterday, where I've been collecting these refugee stories. I've witnessed parents tell unimaginable stories of their children drowning in the Aegean Sea when their boat flipped, or heard how whole families have drowned in the river because they have to seek freedom from Turkey. I've heard the stories of young women who have experienced sexual assault in fleeing other countries, escaped from political tyrannical regimes, and now I've heard stories of those very refugees who thought they had a safe haven in a new country that provided them asylum, only to find that they have to flee and try to claim asylum again to live a peaceful life. A life where they can contribute to a country where their children can be free and get a good education. Right now we're at a crossroads, I believe. In the international community, must hold international human rights policies to its highest degree. We must find solutions by starting at the source of the persecution that's taking place. Yes, human rights abuses at borders and nations using unethical approaches to secure them are all things that we absolutely must be sure we pay attention to and that we must call out. We must continue to develop, though, more innovative ideas and systems that can be implemented to value the life and dignity of a person who is forced to flee. But I want to concentrate right now and tell you about a case study of Greece and how successful they have been in the integration of Turkish political refugees and how they can provide an example of overarching success when it comes to unaccompanied minors and women and children refugees. Greece has been at the forefront right now of the refugee crisis for several years. It's received a huge influx of refugees, many who are unaccompanied minors. So just to make clear, an unaccompanied minor is children under the age of 18 who arrive in a foreign country without a parent or legal guardian. They're particularly vulnerable and they face many challenges, including separation from their families, exposure to violence and exploitation, and difficulties accessing education and healthcare. And to address those vulnerable children, Greece has developed several programs, forward-thinking programs, aimed at providing them with protection, support, and access to basic services. And this program, the Reception and Identification Center, or RIC, are facilities that have been established by the Greek government to receive and identify refugees and asylum seekers who arrive in the country. Now, unaccompanied minors are housed separately from adults in special facilities designed to meet their unique needs. Now, unaccompanied minors receive food, clothing, and shelter, as well as medical care and psychosocial support, which is often missing in many other countries and nations. They also receive assistance with legal procedures and access to education and vocational training. And another important program for unaccompanied minors is called the Guardianship Network. Guardians help minors navigate the complex legal procedures that are involved in obtaining asylum and reunifying with family members and accessing basic services. Now, in addition to these programs, Greece has also established a system of foster care for unaccompanied minors. Foster families are carefully selected and trained to provide a safe and nurturing environment for minors who cannot be reunited with their families and who do not have family members in Greece. Finally, Greece has also established a program to support unaccompanied minors who wish to return to their home countries. And that program provides assistance with travel arrangements, again, legal procedures, and reintegration into their communities. So overall, Greece has developed a comprehensive set of programs aimed at providing protection, support, and access to basic services for unaccompanied minors. And those programs recognize the unique needs and vulnerabilities of unaccompanied minors, and they aim to provide them with the care and attention that they need to thrive. So it's important to note, as I know, that every country's approach to refugees is different. It depends on a variety of factors, including their resources, the political climate, and cultural norms. There are many other countries that have provided different kinds of programs as well that have been shown to work, and they're said to work by the refugees themselves. I'll just give you some quick examples. Canada has a private sponsorship of refugee program. Germany's welcome culture. Australia's community support program. Uganda's refugee policy program. And that allows refugees to work, move freely, and access education and healthcare right away. Sweden's Right to Work program. The United States has the Resettlement Support Center program. So all of those different kinds of programs are forward-thinking. And we know that they're successful for the most part because it's the refugees themselves that are saying, this worked for me. When I asked refugees in Greece about some of the initiatives that they found to be helpful, and this is also with humanitarian organizations, they mentioned these kinds of things. Emergency reception facilities that were staffed and trained by professionals. Legal assistance provided to them that helped them navigate the asylum process and access what their rights are. Education and language training for refugees, children and adults. And also family reunification efforts was mentioned. So, while there are certainly challenges and criticisms of the refugee policies in Greece, these are some of the initiatives that have been praised by refugees and humanitarian organizations. As for the refugees that I have encountered in Greece, despite disappointment in practices carried out recently to halt migration, they want to thank Greece. Now they have had more time to integrate into Greek society. They send the message to Greek administration that they are thankful for the country that has provided them a safe haven, provided programs and access to communities that have helped them to integrate into Greek society, and thankful for a country that they feel they have a future to help support and contribute to. So my hope is that organizations, policymakers, and refugees work together to come up with the solutions that can work, rather than shutting down, polarizing, becoming separate. That's my hope.
Thank you so much, Vonya. And that was very important that you talked about the importance of storytelling, because we all attend to conferences, speak at different engagements, and share numbers, statistics. But when these stories are documented, when you do those incredible interviews with the refugees, the numbers are getting alive, you know. And as Alexis underlined, the prideful refugee crisis, which is beyond our imagination, gets more global attention through such interviews. So thank you so much for that. Next, I have Ramona Mihaila. She is a full professor at the Faculty of Foreign Languages and Literatures at Dimitri Cantemir Christian University, Romania, where she teaches undergraduate and graduate courses on women's writing, gender studies, literature, and urban culture. She has been head of the Office of Secretary of State at the National Agency for Equal Opportunities Between Women and Men, within the Ministry of Family, Youth, and Equal Opportunities. She is the author and co-editor of 25 books concerning women's writing, gender studies, and narrative strategies. She has attended over 200 conferences and published the delivered articles in international databases indexed journals. She serves as the executive publishing editor of Journal of Research in Gender Studies and at Latin Academic Publishers in New York. Ramona, the floor is yours.
Hello to everyone. You have my slides. Okay, well, before we move the slides, I want to thank you very much to a Journalist and Writers Foundation for having such interesting panels here and inviting us. I'm telling inviting us because I'm here with a delegation from Romania, and we are here on behalf of the Association for Dialogue and Universal Values. All of my colleagues work also in social assistance, in academia, for government, but also in volunteering. So we put our forces together and not only for delivering papers and talking about this, but we hope to be a group for next conferences too. And before I start talking from the point of view of the National Agency for Equal Opportunities Between Women and Men, I would like to say a few words from the academia environment. So I work as a vice provost for international relations, and I enrolled a lot of students, refugee students, who haven't had any documents with them, and who couldn't prove that they graduated any kind of school. So even if the government supported them, for example, they should provide in time, in less than a year, some documents, otherwise they were expelled. So at the very beginning, all I don't know, the measures were very welcoming, let's say, but then little by little, they discovered they didn't have too many rights. For example, they got a visa only for 3 months. If they couldn't prove anything with documents, after 3 months, they were expelled. If they got long-term visas, for example, they couldn't apply for mobilities exchange in Europe. We have a program which is called Erasmus, means students can travel from one country to another for a semester or for a year of study. They couldn't apply for this because, for example, we don't have in Romania all the embassies or the consulates to provide them visas. For example, a student from Bangladesh couldn't apply for a term in Finland, let's say, because in order to have the visa, he had to travel to Bulgaria, where Finland had a consulate. So what I want to underline is the fact that indeed there were very good measures, but we have to improve them. And we have to look at other international partners in order to improve all these things. In terms of the National Agency for Equal Opportunities between women and men, we run here 5 projects concerning violence against women, and we dedicated the last project to Ukrainian refugee women because we are neighbors. Romania is a neighboring country to them. I forgot to mention, in terms of students, most of them came to Romania from Turkey, also from the geographical point of view, from Turkey, from Syria, and now from Ukraine. And also we welcomed even foreign students. They were studying in Turkey or in Ukraine. So even if they didn't have any documents with them. Okay, moving to this project called Venus. It was, Romania has 42 different counties, and with this project we managed to build sheltering houses in all these counties. Women can get, besides bare necessities, they have psychological consulting, and also they are trained in order when they go out from these houses to work, because most of them don't have a place to work. Then there were many other services provided for them and so on. And the most important one is a helpline that covers it non-stop, and it is dedicated to all the victims. For example, the Ukrainian refugee women, we signed an agreement with the university, and we asked the students who speak Russian or Ukrainian to come and help us in order to answer to this phone anonymously, in an anonymous way. All these calls were directed to police or social assistance and so on. So we don't know their names, their age and so on. We know only numbers. Here is, there are some photos with the sheltering houses just to see that they have everything. Yes, here are some numbers that by December 2022, there were over 7,000 victims who benefited from these services. Now, because we are here and we are talking about Greece, I just made a list with all the Greek associations in Romania. That, as you can see, they also help refugees. Just there is a list, but I could provide it if you are interested in. Then there is also a list with all the Romanian associations in Greece, because I found out that they work together, so they focus also on refugee people, and they provide know-how to each other. Okay, you may just... and we have also some international organizations. As you can see, the Romanian National Council for Refugees Foundation. Then also a Catholic organization with a mission to accompany, serve, and advocate for the rights of refugees and others who are forcibly displaced. Some other international organizations, and the last one is the International Women's Association of Bucharest. And I have here also my colleague who was the president of this association, and they managed to help a lot of refugee women by their charity actions and many other actions. So thank you very much. If you have further questions, I will answer later. Thank you very much.
Well, Ramona, thank you so much for sharing the best practices of Romania and underlining the importance of international collaboration and sharing states' best practices to further empower women refugees. Moving on, now we will hear from Ahsen Karagulmez. She's a 18 years old youth advocate. She lived in Turkey until the age of 15 and then lived in Greece for 3 years. Now she lives with her family in Houston as the family reunification successfully took place, and she is in her junior year in high school. I had the privilege of meeting with Ahsen when I was in Greece and heard the wonderful integration stories that all the youth have back in Athens. And now she's here. It's really a pleasure to have her as a youth advocate to speak at this platform. So Ahsen, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Ahsen. I'm 18 years old and I'm living in Texas, Houston right now. When I was 12 years old, there was a coup on the night of July 15, which started a series of events for my parents. We had to live in Turkey for 3 years after that coup, constantly evading the police because my parents were going to be arrested for simply being teachers. I remember the days when we had to hide in different places to avoid getting caught. My parents were just doing their job, but they were treated like criminals. It was a difficult time for us, and we had to leave everything behind. Then in 2019, my family made a decision and we went to Greece as refugees. We had been asylum seekers and it was a new beginning for us. That night, I made a promise to myself. I said I would narrate all of these injustices we have experienced to the world. I felt my life changed on a cellular level. I felt terrible while we were passing through Greece because we faced serious obstacles, but then Greece seemed like a paradise. Because we were relieved of the pressures in Turkey and the fear of my parents being arrested. We tasted freedom. It was not easy to move to a new country, leaving everything in the past, and most importantly, not losing my confidence to start all over again. These were the things I had to handle at that time. Moving to a new country was not easy. New culture, a new environment, and a new language. It was difficult to get used to a new place. But I had to start somewhere for this world to change. I had to start from somewhere and I had to do something. So I started learning English and Greek to improve myself. I knew education was the only way to fight ignorance and overcome persecution. Refugee means escaping from persecution, and persecution comes from ignorance. The exact thing that can destroy ignorance is education. My dad taught me this. My father helped give me the confidence to guide myself through the world. We started school a week after we went to Greece, and I remember crying a lot when I first started school because I could not communicate at all. I did not know their language, but even though I didn't know the language, the people in my class tried to be friends with me. I remember the moment when I experienced a shift in consciousness that gave me the ability to maintain my life. They were trying to speak English next to me so that I could understand what they were talking about and not feel alone. At that moment, I felt that life had brought me such good friends and that the Greek people were truly sincere. It was a moment of realization for me that good people can change the world. 2 months later, my father came to America and we stayed in Greece with my mother and siblings. We started waiting for family reunification process. It was hard to leave my father, but nothing was easy in my life anyway. What does family mean? Parents and children being together and experiencing emotional togetherness. Being a refugee has separated us, but it could not separate our emotional togetherness. Being a refugee lady taught us to be strong, patient, and never lose hope, and that we always have a second chance in life. We didn't expect our family reunification to be this long. We were going to meet eventually, and it really hurt us to wait so long for something we knew the end of. We lived apart from my father for 3.5 years, and we missed a lot of moments with my dad. And I was not a little girl anymore. I was 18 years old. I learned to be grateful while living in Greece because we were in good health, no matter what, and our mental health was good even though we had a lot of trouble. Greece really made me feel very good, both with its people and with its nature. Maybe that's why we protect our mental health. As long as we stayed in Greece, I improved my English and started teaching English to young children. It was during this time that I discovered my passion for teaching. Teaching English to young children was a transformative experience for me. It gave me a sense of direction and purpose that I had been lacking for so long. I was able to see the impact that my teaching had on my students, and I started to feel valuable again after I experienced it being useful to someone. I really needed to empower and redefine myself, redefine my personality, and I was doing that by teaching English to children. As my confidence grew, I decided to take things to the next level, and together with my friends, we established an education platform and started to provide education to refugee children. In a very short time, this platform started to teach more than 1,000 students, and more of our volunteer friends started to help us. It was incredible to see the impact that we were having on these children's lives. For the first time in a long time, that they had hope for the future. Being able to make a difference in the lives of these children gave me a sense of purpose that I had been missing for so long. It reminded me that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. That even in the face of adversity, we can still make a difference. Greece was a turning point in my life. It gave me the tools and opportunities that I needed to grow and develop as a person. It taught me the value of hard work, determination, and most importantly, it showed me that anything is possible if you believe in yourself. And I would like to talk about my real hero, who never let go of us and always together with us in this journey. During the challenging period of being a refugee and seeking asylum, she played an incredible, important role in my life. She took on the responsibilities of both a mother and a father to my siblings and me, trying her best to shield us from the absence of our father. She always protected and cared for us during the struggles we faced, showing us the importance of standing tall despite all obstacles. Despite the absence of our father, she never allowed us to feel alone and doubt with all stress, and showed us how strong a woman can be without a man by her side. Even though there were difficulties in becoming a refugee in Greece, because there were a lot of official procedures and paperwork, and my mother had to handle all of them. The process was very slow, and sometimes we had to wait for months for a simple procedure, just like we had to wait for 3 years for family reunification. Her strength and perseverance are truly inspiring and have left a profound impact on my life. When I look back, and then I realize my life by how meaningful that seemingly. Looking back on my experience in Greece, I feel a deep sense of gratitude toward the country and its people. The connections I made with these individuals have enriched my life in countless ways, and I miss them dearly. In conclusion, my mother's unwavering support and strength, along with the kindness of the Greek people, have been instrumental in shaping who I am today. I will always cherish the memories and relationships I formed during my time in Greece. I truly believe that good people can change the world. It's up to us to never give up, to struggle, and always fight for what is right. Yes, there can be evil in the world. People may be persecuted unjustly. They may lose their homes, homelands, and the lands they were born in, and they may have to leave. But they should not give up the struggle, because the change of ignorance against education is as much as the change of darkness against light. So we must continue to shine brightly and never lose hope. Thank you for listening.
Well, Ahsen, thank you so much for that beautiful talk. You're setting a great example for your peers, coming all the way to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women from Texas. I know you have exams going on and everything, but in the hectic schedule you have, I'm so glad to have you here. And not only that, you're courageous enough to tell your story, which is traumatic for many of individuals who share the same experience with you. You already started giving back to your community and empower others by giving a hand to the ones that are in need. Thank you so much. We have a good amount of time, like 15 minutes or so, that we can engage with the audience, have some questions. Anybody would like to break the ice, especially without any technical issues? Thankfully, we still have Alexis on the screen, or for Vonya, Ramona. Yes, if you could please introduce yourself too.
Yeah, hi, my name is I'm with the Mother's Legacy Project, is why I'm here, and I'm starting my PhD at the University of Utah this fall in political science and migration studies. And my question is, I think, and by the way, thank all of you, both on virtual and being here, because you are all very inspirational in the work that you do, so thank you very much. But I think it's very important that these diasporas have a voice, because they are the ones that are going to make the change, both in host country and home country. So how do we expand, like, I'd like to hear from all of you how we can expand the access diasporas have in nonprofit and in government realms, especially government realms in the host country, to change policy and just change culture as a whole. Sorry, that was kind of a multifaceted question.
No. Alexis, if you heard the question, I would like to start with you. a very brief summary. I believe you would like to learn more from the perspective of panelists on how do we expand more to these diasporas and extend civil society contribution, maybe get in touch with the officials and everything. Alexis, would you like to say a couple of remarks to answer that?
I missed the question. The sound was not...
Sure. Would you like to come up to stage and maybe share it with Alexis yourself?
Hello. So my question is, how can we expand diasporic influences in changing policy and overall, even non-state culture? Like, what role can diasporas play in this? Both first, second, third generation.
Were you able to hear it?
Yes. The question is, how can we expand the action and to influence the policies? I mean, in my opinion, in my view, there are two levels. The first level is to offer our hand to the people, okay, as Cemre explained, to overcome stereotypes which are based on gender or ethnicity or anything like that. And then we can do it through our work, the work of people, not only human rights activists, but every voice can count on that. And you know, when people, it's when people changes, the universe changes. I mean, there is a candle in the dark. It's difficult. I acknowledge this of altering and forming the foreign policies and the state policies, but I can see a very optimistic message. You all know the tension, the political tension between the Greek and the Turkish government, but at this point and in this room, I see no tension. I see people who understand. I see people who feel each other. And that's the important point, because we can't change the government. Maybe we can't change what they say or what their interests, but we can change ourselves. And we will be attitude towards themselves. I heard Ahsen voice. The word it is go beyond. I mean, for me, the responsibility and the personal example is important. Eventually, there will be a wave that will, if not, it change our world.
Thank you so much. That was a very strong answer, and +1, I do agree with you. Change is starting within the communities, and it will echo throughout the intergovernmental arenas and in governments as well. Anybody else who would like to add anything else to this question? Okay. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Dimitra. I'm from Greece. I'm here with an international organization as part of a delegate for the CSW. In my free time, I'm also an activist in social movements in Greece. I'm part of the anti-racist festival happening every year. I'm also in the Network for Political and Social Rights. I'm gonna take down my professional hat and put my social movements hat, because I think that this is a safe space. And I will answer a bit of the question on how we can help the people in Greece fighting for refugee and migrant rights. And I'm really happy that some of the people here, they had a really nice experience in Greece. And I also support the fact that a lot of people in the Greek community has been helping refugees, but for others it is a living hell. And this is a situation, and I have to say that the Greek government is doing a lot is focusing a lot on PR and on marketing techniques in order to improve their stance. This is very, very important for the Greek government and for part of the Greek society. We did a lot of surveys on the perception of the Greeks and migrants, of the Greek people on migrants and refugees, and it keeps coming up, the pride that comes as a social, from the national identity, that we help the refugees, which is something that, in my personal opinion, I do not support. But I would say that it's quite important to leave aside and support the hope-based attitude and name what's going on in Greece. Today, or yesterday, the European Parliament's Commission for Civil Liberties visited Greece and had a damning report saying that the Greek state, it is close to a failed state. There are a lot of human rights violations, there are a lot of things happening at the borders. There's a lot of people trying to cross from Turkey to Italy and drawing in the middle because they don't want to go to Greece, because they know the situation in Greece. So it is very important to actually name the Greek, to separate the governments from the people. Yes, I agree with Alexis that it's really refreshing to be in the room with Turkish people and feel the joy. And from my experience, I've never had an issue. I have a lot of friends in Turkey and Greece, and the people are always there for each other, but not the government. So I think it's very important to just name these policies. Since it's the CSW, I would like also to remind you that the Greek is last in the index, in the European index for gender equality. The gender equality situation in Greece is horrible as well. So do name it, that it exists, that it happens. We don't want to feed into the national pride a lot. Putting back my NGO hat on, I would like to say that I heard in the official negotiation someone saying the antis are more vocal than the pros, that the pros normally we're very critical of the governments, and the anti-refugee people make a lot of more noise. So that's also true, and I would say that it's very important to be critical on who we talk to. When we talk with like safe spaces, it's important to name the problems. When we talk with officials, it's important to try to put one step forward, not to be that critical, because it's important to actually achieve results rather than be always on the anti-side. Thank you. And thank you for the people in Alexis and Yusra, for the people in Greece that's staying. It's 1 o'clock there, so my solidarity.
Well, thank you so much. Well, today we wanted to prioritize the civil society best practices, just like you also mentioned, and like the successful stories like Ahsen's. Well, that's why in the very early beginning of remarks, I wanted to underline that the crisis is political, not humanitarian. As you perfectly briefed about the situation, we don't see much problem within the communities. As Turkish and Greek societies, we do have more in common than the things that separates us, and I was able to witness that when I was in Athens, and I was quite thankful for the state to welcome over 15,000 people, among whom I know many in person who had to flee Turkey. But sure, I do agree with you that we have to work on the better implementation of state laws as well, in partnership with the state authorities. Anything else you would like to add on to that? No? Okay. Maybe one more question. I have one for Vonya, but before that, maybe. Okay. Just like Ahsen shared her story, I wanna hear more examples. I know Rusu is doing an international work to go over different countries, meet with refugees and document their stories. As this is an event led by PIGI, I know you've been into the region as well, did many interviews. Just want to have a women success story from you. Is there anyone that you met there and you cannot forget, or really did an impact on you too?
Yes, I have lots of stories on both sides. So I'll tell a successful story real quick now, and then just so that you know, tonight I'm going to be telling a very hard story at a film screening that's going to be held in Long Island, and that's about a family that lost their children. But this woman that I met in Greece this past summer, one of the things that she said that really struck me is she said, I feel like I'm a part of the community here now. I feel like I have integrated because I pay taxes. And I was like, wait a minute, oh, yeah. Because I pay taxes, I feel like I'm a part of things. So I believe like her and her husband, they started a business, and it became a very successful business in Athens. And you know, it was just a real uplifting moment to hear that. And I had been going to Greece for many times, and since right after the coup. So those stories are starting to change, and those stories are starting to become, for those that have integrated into Greece, ones like that. I pay my taxes.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Alexis or Yusra, any last words that you want to share with the audience before we close the session?
Just to add that you do an amazing job, and at the same time very difficult. Okay, it's something against the stereotypes, the misconceptions that goes hand by hand, supporting women, supporting refugees. It's a very difficult task, and I fully agree with what Dimitra said. We can call by name, we should expose the truth, because at the end of the day, the truth will prevail. Like the sun cannot be hidden, the truth at the end cannot be hidden, and it will prevail. We should call by name what is happening in the borders. We should call by name what is happening in the societies, in the communities, and at the same time with empathy and with compassion for the others.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, one last comment from the audience.
Thank you. Maybe many of you, all of us, are touched by these stories, and it's very easy then to leave this room and go on with our lives. I think the things that you can do are role modeling. Usually refugees are kept in places that are not in the main part of the city. People coexist but don't interact. So I will invite you to visit refugee centers when allowed and when you can. Role model your children. Be careful with the words you choose, because you wouldn't say Ahsen is a freeloader. Many people say, what about our poor people? Why do we have to give them to them? But you forget that they have nothing, less than the more poor in your own countries. So my invitation is also to think carefully, who do you vote for? Because as Cemre said, most of the reasons why people are stuck in countries and their documents are not processed quickly, and then they have to take even bigger risks, is because there are countries that don't have enough people in the borders. And we can see, for example, I take the example from Romania, now that the Ukrainian crisis happened, the government acted very swiftly, the whole society, people gave their apartments, after schools were created for the mothers. So it can be done. The only difference is that even between refugees, there's discrimination. Some get more, some get less. And that's very important. So think who do you vote for, because they are making the decisions for this. And many times, as well as they are sacrificing, we have to sacrifice. Romania, for example, got a vote of no to enter the Schengen as a punitive from Austria because their borders were not strong enough. And that's the issue, that we cannot create a fortress of Europe full with fences. we have to understand that this is a global thing, and we have people involved in families in global transition that need us, the civil society, to take action, to get out of our comfort zones, to dedicate at least one weekend to do something about this. Because it won't disappear just because we close our eyes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very important that you underline the difference between coexisting and interacting with one another. And sliding back from democracy it happens faster than we can imagine. That's how hundreds of thousands of people find themselves as political refugees in one night in Turkey. I think, lastly, President of JWF.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to thank for Ahsen for sharing your story. I know for a fact that we have been helping many Turkish refugees who are fleeing from Turkey, putting their lives at risk. It's not easy to cross the Evros River. It's not easy to cross the Aegean Sea. They put their lives, and sometimes the Evros River is also named, the river of the dead bodies. And I'm so happy that you managed to cross to Greece, and we are so thankful for Greece for welcoming Turkish refugees and giving them their homes, their food, sharing them. And so we are so thankful for the people of Greece and the government of Greece as well. But more, I would like to thank Ahsen. Really, you really are a hope for many of us. And I shared some of the clips of your talk with my network on WhatsApp, and everybody is thanking you for sharing your stories. You are a strong young woman, and you're a human rights defender, and you are trying to, being a hope for the rest of the people. But at the same time, I would like to thank Ramona for coming as a delegation from Romania, because it's not only the Turkish refugees we talked about, because with the Ukrainian war, and Romania has become one of the welcoming country, host country, welcoming so many refugees coming from Ukraine, and it's a natural border, and we have been following this from the news and from many other resources. So we are so thankful for the government of Romania and the people of Romania. And thank you so much for your delegation, for being with us and giving a voice to the people, because many people do not know about it unless it is told. Just like the refugees' unknown stories untold. If Vonya doesn't travel to Greece, to Norway, across Europe, hearing about these stories and getting them known, so that these stories are known. So thank you so much, Vonya, as well. Just wanted to share my reflections on behalf of the JWF.
Thank you so much, and a big thanks to PIGI from Greece, Athens, for getting us all together in the room. Even though they're not here, they're watching us. They will be publicizing the expert speakers' remarks and everything. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon, and let's end the session.